And we are officially live. So today on Lifestyle Medicine, we've got Thomas Fairman. Bro, thank you for doing this first and foremost.
It's an honor. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here. So excited.
Yeah, it's a
This is
blast.
awesome.
Yeah, I've been waiting to get you on here, man. You were one of my people when I met you. I don't know, was that like two years ago?
It was last year, I think.
Last year, was it?
Or
Okay.
maybe two. No,
Year
it was
and a
last
half.
year.
Yeah, something like that. Somewhere in that range, though. And I met Thomas through David Beaudry's medical Qi Gong program. You were doing that work. So, Thomas, why don't you give us kind of a breakdown on what you're doing? You know, I know why I wanted to interview you, but it's always good to give the audience context to what you're up to, just so they know who you are.
Sure. So again, Charge Lifestyle is my brand. And really my mission is to deliver professionals from many of the lifestyle pitfalls of the modern day office life. I'm based in Silicon Valley, and so I work at a startup. We're not a startup really. We're starting to stabilize, but you know, it's a grind. It's 40, 50, however many hours it is.
Yep.
And that's in a nutshell. It's delivering professionals from some of those pitfalls so that they can live more free and just independent of the sort of stress that's associated, like the grind, work hard. It's, you know, like there can be that, and that's important. And also just bringing the balance through different elements. I'm a personal trainer. Mm-hmm. I'm also in the process of getting my medical Qi Gong certification through David Beaudry, as you mentioned.
Yep.
And so ex-Division I athlete, and also
what did you do in athletics? What's your athletic background?
I played basketball.
Yeah, you're tall. That makes sense.
Tall dude. Yep.
Yeah. Rock on.
I played at Santa Clara University. I was on the practice team there. I walked on. So basically they're a Division I school, as I mentioned. Mm-hmm. I'm really proud of that. Okay. I'm really proud of that. Like, I came from this tiny we had 20 kids in my graduating class in Hawaii, this tiny school. I remember a coach saying specifically, none of you are ever going to play Division I ball. And then to be that guy, it's like, there's an honor there.
Right. Absolutely, man.
But the only way I was able to do it was through Qigong, which we'll probably probably about at some point in this.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into that. It's a good topic for, I think, Americans in general to hear about it, because it gets lost too. People are like, what the hell is it? But going back to what you were saying with, you know, the pitfalls that you're seeing in people's lifestyle, right? With Charged Lifestyle and the thing that you're doing, you know, in your estimation, what are some of the pitfalls? What are the big holes that, you know, the average, what I would say the corporate, you know, lifestyle where people are working 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week or more? Mm-hmm. What have you seen thus far? Like what are some of the biggest things that people get snagged on in terms of compromising their health, their life force, yada, yada, yada?
I think the number one pitfall, kind of bucket, which contains many different other sub issues that come off of it. Mm-hmm. It's that we're encouraged to sacrifice our health for doing work. Like, given the choice, if you're going to sleep an extra hour and like not get up and not work out, like it's so easy to cut health out. Yeah. When work starts to expand. It just, you know, it's like, I don't need to go for my walk today, or I don't need to, you know, I'm just going to eat lunch at my desk. I'm just going to rush it down. Like, work sort of expands, and we haven't had the fundamental training in how to manage our well-being as a people, I think.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And this is an overly simplified question. Okay. It's definitely a leading question. I have an answer already, but I'm definitely curious. Like, why is that an issue? Why is, you know, in your thinking, why is it bad to compromise your health for work?
Well,
I mean, I have my answers, but it's like, some people are like, I think sometimes, man, I mean, I've worked with these people. They're like, work is everything, you know, like it's almost like they're defined by that excessively overly productive thing, and their identity's kind of wrapped up in it. So I would love to hear your thoughts, like why you think that's not such a good idea.
I think if you're really out to be productive, that your health is it's your number one resource for that.
Agreed.
Like, I can't tell you how many times I've sat at a desk. You know, when you sit for 10 hours, you don't function. Your brain doesn't function. You can't think.
Correct. I'm brought back to this simple point too. I mean, when I work with people, it's, you know, they're like, I want to do more, you know, I want to make more money. And that's great. And I'm like, yeah, go for your dreams, you know, go big. But there's a real simple principle here, which is, you know, your flesh suit, this thing that you're inhabiting, has some needs, it has some demands. And if it goes out, there is no more work. You know, if you go into adrenal fatigue or you go into or whatever else, it's like you got to take care of the vehicle. You know, that's really just kind of the bottom line if you want to be productive and do good things in the world. So I agree, man. Yeah, like it's really, really important. When you have, how do you, you know, how successful are you in bridging that idea, you know, into people's lives? If they are, say, like the very, you know, highly driven, excessive workaholic type, how much push do you have to really do to get this into people's psyche to where they're receptive to it? Or is it, you know, welcomed? Like, what's that terrain look like?
Well, I think the key is making it easy and simple. And like, it doesn't have to be this radical shift at first.
Right.
You know, it's just like taking that, like, it doesn't take much. It just takes, like, there's a lot of articles about how like a 10-minute or 20-minute walk will like totally alter your state. Or even so Charge Lifestyle, one of the things we did for a while was I had published charge breaks every day. And these are like little 3 to 5 minute, I have a couple of YouTube videos on this, like just 3 to 5 minute routines that you can do to fire back up your body and like reignite your system.
Yeah.
And so the key is making it, so number one, I think, is not making it like, this is kind of how you position it, right? It's like not making it wrong that one lives a certain way.
Yeah, not shaming what someone's doing.
Exactly, and and having that person discover for themselves that well-being and taking care of themselves and eating right really does ultimately impact their productivity in a positive way.
Yeah,
and it's how navigating how to have people have that discovery. I think a lot of it is making it fun, making it community-based.
Yeah, group.
Like, that's huge.
It is huge. And I think what I like about that is I think that's the hurdle that sometimes people don't get over. I think, you know, adjusting your lifestyle, making these little tweaks. I like what you just said because I think that's absolutely accurate. And it starts with small baby steps. And those small baby steps, your body responds pretty strongly when you do those little tiny things. You know, that's like the thing to get into people's minds is that you don't have to start with this, you know, the rock workout, you know, where you're up at 4 a.m. and just, you know, doing crazy shit from the earliest hour, you know, to get, you know, the body or the mindset that you want. It's amazing what your body will do if you just give it a little bit of fuel. You know, you give it a little bit of stress reduction, you give it a little bit of the right foods, you know, you give it a little bit the nudge, the body will immediately be like, you know, for one, be grateful. And two, the performance kicks up pretty fast. You know, there's like those small things. So when you're framing this for people, I like that you said, you know, don't shame them, you know, for like the stuff that they're doing. Like, don't make them feel bad.
I go there. I so go there, like, because it's how I am with myself.
It's funny.
You know, you're just a horrible person. You just need to, you know, get your shit together. Like, come on, like, you're bad. Like, you're impacting humanity in a negative way.
Right, like, for sure.
So it's just like learning how to filter that.
Yeah, to get it down. When
like,
you're framing that for people, like, what do you, like, what's kind of step one? Okay, like, so don't shame them, right? That's great. And then what do you kind of, what do you have them do? Or is it tailored, you know, for each person, each company? Like, what's your process look like a little bit?
Well, at my current company, we do this. We do planking. We plank every day together at 3:00.
Rock on.
The clock starts 3, and outside of it's a small company. It's like 30 people, 40 people, at least in this office. And we get in front of the CEO's office. There's kind of a carpeted area, and so everybody comes down. It's usually 8 people-ish, sometimes more, and we just plank for 5 minutes.
Nice.
And the way we started to get that rolling was number one, everybody really has this desire to be well, like just recognizing that, because as soon as shame comes in, everyone's like, it's like defense mode. And if that's left out, it really provides a space for people to come together and like, oh my gosh, like I actually love to do this. And giving people the space to step into. Yeah. Then they just take it themselves. Like I remember starting this thing at this company that I'm at, and then it just, I left. I actually took a break from the company for a brief period for a few months, and during that time, the company kept planking.
Oh, that's cool.
People kept planking. Yeah,
they kept,
and it's we do it right because they own it, and like finding that way to make them own it. I guess it happened through just momentum. You build the habit, right? The brain, the neural, this system loves, this machine loves repetition.
It does. It likes routine, man. Yeah, absolutely.
It does.
Yeah,
it does.
It loves routine, and if it's something that actually fuels you and gives back to you, then there's, the body remembers. It's not stupid. It's like quite the opposite. It has an incentive to like continue to push in that direction. That is for sure.
Yep. It's like a control system. I don't know. I'm an engineer. I'm a kind of a nerd. Yeah. But like, if you think of like a thermostat, right? Like you turn the thermostat up to 72, and then it'll stay at 72. Yeah. And then you turn it up to 74. It's going to take something to get it up there, but once it gets up there, it's going to adjust as needed. If it starts to get colder, it's going to turn on the heat, and then it's going to keep it right there. And it's those changes that it's like everybody knows this about exercise, right? It's like the getting started that's the hardest part.
It is. Yeah, just getting that rhythm in place, right? Just getting that adjustment period where you're actually getting used to doing, putting something in there that's actually good for you. But then, just getting used to it. But I mean, like most things, it starts to shift pretty quickly. Like again, I think that's the thing that's like nice about when we change our routine, right? When we get something positive in there, is that those little shifts start to make us feel good, and that starts to become the incentive. It's not the story of like I got to get my shit together. It's like actually,
right.
Me doing this shit actually makes me feel better. So that's the push, right? Is that you're like, oh, actually, I feel pretty good. So maybe I'll keep doing this. Maybe I'll keep moving in that direction.
Right.
Well, have you? I know when we had talked, prior to this interview, you had said, you're like you're building out Charge Lifestyle, and you're looking, where your passion lies is getting people, getting them basically out of these pitfalls, right? Not falling into that, just that burnout that we can all hit. As you, and I know you're still building, and you're still kind of in that phase of like getting everything, matriculated into your larger structure. What do you'd mentioned diet, you'd mentioned like food, you'd mentioned, some of the ideas that you're doing to integrate into people's lives better ways to not fall into burnout. What do you think, in terms of like diet, and what's kind of your take on that in terms of how that fits into this larger picture?
Well, one thing I just like right there for me is caffeine, coffee. That's the one thing about this culture that it's like we're coffee drinkers.
Oh yeah.
Like I had a thought this morning. I was driving to work and I saw Starbucks on the corner, and I was like, wow, if there were no Starbucks in this country, it would not work. Like our economy would crash.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
Big time.
Like
it's true. It's very true.
So finding ways to responsibly and like to manage that, because I think there's a toll that once you get used to it, you don't necessarily see the quality of life difference, but like controlling caffeine and coffee consumption, using things like MCTs, butter, coconut oil,
Yep.
These types of things to manage the caffeine. Also, I just got a mushroom mix.
Nice.
Like finding other ways to introduce that energy, like having people, like there's other things that we can be exposed to, which can also provide us with energy. They're not necessarily the same as caffeine. It's not coffee, but it can give you what you need to keep moving towards whatever your objective is in your job.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, I love that you touch on that point, because I think like you said, I mean, everyone is on the caffeine ride, right? We're a culture of Red Bull, Monster energy drinks, NOS, like nitrous, like there's all these kind of crazy energy drinks that you look around.
I saw this one that was like a green Spartan, like a Spartan helmet.
Yeah, totally. Totally. And they push it like, and it does technically work, right? There is an effect from stimulants and caffeine. Like we do get, we get revved up. The thing that that people forget, right, is that there's that taxation. The adrenals get hit, right? I mean, cortisol levels, the stress hormone, that spikes up. And then we've got all these inflammatory processes that are happening. So it's like, yes, you get this rush, you get this definitely boost, but it's not sustainable in the long run, and it's cumulative, right? I mean, that the caffeine, how many people do you know that are just like super caffeine drinkers? When they stop coffee, they get like withdrawal symptoms, right? They've got headaches. They can't function in the afternoon, and they almost need that caffeine hit just like an
addiction.
Right, like an alcoholic needs a beer. They're like, I can't stop. So what's go ahead.
Can I ask you a question? Can you elaborate a little bit on the caffeine response? It's like kind of what happens there?
Yeah, man, it's an evolving area for me. I mean, like Chinese medicine really touches on it. So, my background comes from Chinese medicine, acupuncture. That's like my foundational core system that I lean on. And their whole thing is, your kidneys are the source of all yin and yang in the body, right? So the polarity of like fire and water, right? The restoration and activity, that whole balance, those energies are hardwired, into our body and into our organ systems. All the organs need rest. All of them need activity, and they need different things. But the way the Chinese see it is that your kidneys are the source of all yin and yang. Like they're the yin yang powerhouses that run all the other organ systems. So your yin yang reserves are based on how well your kidneys are functioning. And as you had mentioned, right, before this talk, the adrenals sit on top of the kidneys. And that's part of the kidney system. That's like quite literally, right? They're resting. They're like the reserves there. And we all know the stories of if a mother's baby is pinned under a vehicle, and a woman can like move or lift a car, right? They become superhuman because of the adrenaline that can pump through. So there's a lot of like Chinese medicine calls it Jing, like our deep constitutional strength reserves that can be burned up. So with that in mind, the whole idea with Chinese medicine is you don't want to burn out your kidneys, right? You don't want to tax and deplete those adrenals, and that is what happens with stimulants in general, right? We get that bump of adrenaline. There is like some, those stimulating things will pull us, and that's kind of what we're feeling, is that like that rush. And the basic idea in Chinese medicine is you don't want to lean on that. Your Jing, that constitutional strength, the thing that can give you tremendous strength, you want to, you want to treat that as a treasure. You want to hold that in reserve. You want to conserve the Jing, and you don't want to be depleting your adrenals. So that means through, skydiving, people that are adrenaline junkies, that depletes your kidneys. And so what happens is we get that aging cycle, right? We get weathered and dried out looking way sooner. We might go really, really gray early on. Like Steve Martin, he was really gray early on, and that could be for a bunch of different reasons. But, noticing that if that's happening, those things have a very real effect on us. And what we want to do is we want to conserve and bolster Jing, right? We want to like actually replenish the adrenals, not tax them. And that slow build is the long-lasting energy that you're really looking for. And that's what the Chinese were really good at. They're like, slow, like what you're saying, slow down. Don't just burn the system and have that system be revving so high. So I don't know if you guys talked about this in your medical Qi Gong program, but they have the analogy of the kerosene lantern. And they talk about it. So like if you think of a kerosene lantern, it's got the liquid in the bottom, right? That is the fuel. That's your Jing. That's your like the sustenance, the thing that will actually give the fuel. The fire is the Qi, or the vital energy that you're using every day. It gives off heat. And then the light that lights up the room is the Shen, or the spirit.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool analogy. And those three things are sort of the metaphor for your body. So excessive caffeine use is the equivalent of like, well, shit, let's turn up the fire. Let's get a big flame and turn that flame up, and it gets hot, right? And we can feel it, and we're like, ooh, my hands are getting warm, right? Like, that's great. But what's that doing? That's using the fuel source, the kerosene, much faster. And the idea is when the kerosene lantern, right, when the Jing goes out, that's what we call truly end of life. When all of your Jing is truly gone, that's death. So, and when someone's on their deathbed and they're like, and they're taking their last breath, that Jing is just like, that's being extracted out. So that's kind of like the backdrop idea for
Yeah.
caffeine use.
Totally.
So
Totally.
when you're saying this, I'm like, yeah, man, like caffeine, shit.
It's our culture, right? It's that,
Absolutely.
adrenaline burn, like let's go, rock stars and freaking like jet planes and like, like this is our culture.
Yeah. And people are hyped up on it. They're very,
And
they're very
like
hyped
what
up on
see,
it.
it's the way that our media, it's the way that we're spoken to, communicated to.
Yes.
Like, we see like 5 seconds on YouTube or 10 seconds of like, it's like what we see on YouTube or generally, it's like what we see is like these super highlights, like these peaks, right? Like you want to see, you don't want to watch an NBA game. You want to watch the top 10 plays, right? On SportsCenter. You don't want to watch all these sports. You just want to watch the highlights. You want to watch these peak moments, like boom, boom, boom.
Right. That's the game, bro.
And that's what matters. And right. And like, so we're like constantly chasing that, but like what actually gets us there, and this is what I believe, you may agree.
Yeah.
That it's the foundation. It's building that strong foundation, which allows people to reach those peaks, right? Like Bruce Lee or Michael Jordan or anybody. It's like the practicing and it's the tilling of the field over time, which allows it to bear good fruit. And if you're constantly like, I don't know, like, I'm not sure how I can keep going with the plant analogy, but if you're...
No, that's right, man. You're right on point.
Button over and over and over, there's nothing left to get out of it.
You're absolutely right. And I do agree with you. And, the piece that you said, where you're like the incorporation of mushrooms, you're like, you just started to incorporate that. That's sort of just, to add on to that idea that we're bouncing around here is just that. I mean, the whole spectrum of adaptogenic herbs, mushrooms fall into that, that's exactly right. It doesn't deplete you. It helps your body adapt to stress. And that's the energy that we're kind of looking for, right? I mean, that's the thing that you're talking about too, is how do we give our body, through things we put into it, the activities we're doing, how do we give it a leg up so that the body is well equipped? Excuse me. The flu is still got, I had this flu last week, man, that cough still comes up when I'm talking, but yeah, it's like, how do we give our bodies that leg up so that we adapt to stress well? Because if we adapt to stress, that adaptive stress thing is really, that's the magic, right? Like we want the acute short stresses that our body has to like deal with, not the chronic long-term stress.
Right.
And that's what caffeine does.
The reserves to be able to deal with whatever comes up. Right?
Correct.
That's it.
Absolutely, man. Well, when you've, with this, what have you seen in your own life? Like, I would love to hear your personal experience, because I'm assuming, you said you're like, oh, I beat myself up, right? Like you fall prey to, the American mind is pretty rough, right? We're like, if we're not doing 150%, we're just a piece of shit. We're lazy, we're all these things. So what's been your experience in this journey thus far? Like, what kind of got you on this road?
Wow. Like, kind of looking on the road of just creating that balance, I'd say. So I grew up in Hawaii. And then I moved to the Bay Area for college. Basically, I lived 10 years on the Big Island.
Big Island. Okay, I was just going to ask which island.
Yep.
Were you on the Hilo side or the Kona side?
Oh, bro, I was on the Hilo side.
All right, bro.
For those of you, bro, I can always click right into the pigeon, bro.
Yeah.
It's been so long, but
it's
there, bro. Garens.
Yeah.
Garens, ball bearings, boy.
I love the Big Island.
It's so laid back. It's like, oh, jeez. Right, we go beach.
It's beautiful, man.
Different culture,
yes.
right? And then you come to the Silicon Valley and you're like, oh, this is different.
What is this?
So I started to become a little bit of a different person in college. Some kind of like my quote unquote shadow, if you will, developed there. Of like, I have an aspect of my persona which is very go, and very judgmental of others. Like I kind of moved from Hawaii to this place, and I made up like, these people are idiots. These people are stupid. This isn't the way we should live. And so my response was like to shut myself off and work really hard. So I was, electrical engineering degree. There was a period of my junior year was kind of the peak of my, this phase. I had moved off campus and I was pursuing my electrical engineering degree. I had 2 part-time jobs, and I was a Division I athlete, like training at the Division I level.
Yeah.
And it was just like so much on this journey of growth as because I really was driven with this passion to grow. Despite how it may have manifested, and I had this passion to grow and evolve. And I discovered Qi Gong around my sophomore or junior year. I discovered David Beaudry. My brother said, hey, you want to check out this?
Yeah.
And so I went, and I started practicing every day. Like I went to this, I learned in Harbin Hot Springs. I took David's Jedi activation retreat.
Yeah.
I started practicing the immortal form every day. These 6 forms, for those of you listening who may not be familiar.
Yeah, give it background to that, because most people don't.
So Qi Gong, right? We've been talking about Qi Gong, and basically, one of the purposes of Qi Gong is to overflow what Gray was talking about, the bottom of the kerosene lantern.
Yeah.
So to replenish that oil, the lower dantian, and so this comes through this process of energy cultivation and activating the parasympathetic nervous system, which is we have the fight or flight branch of the nervous system.
Yeah.
And then we have the rest and digest aspect, which is the relaxing, right? The parasympathetic nerves. And so a lot of Qigong is about cultivating that, activating that state, becoming aware of that. Mm-hmm. And, so the immortal form was it was a Qigong form that I learned from David Beaudry, involving training each of the 5 organ systems, 5 of the organ systems of the body.
Yep. Hold on one second, man. I just realized my computer was not plugged in, and my battery just gave me the signal. So
there it is.
If I lost our session, I'd be very, very pissed. So I'm plugged in now. Okay. So
awesome.
Keep talking.
Right? We all need to be plugged in. We all need
yes,
that
we do, man.
Right? Our electronics, we build them the same way.
That's right. So keep going, man. Keep staying on your flow.
Yeah, building the battery, right? So the 5 organ systems that form involves are the earth, right? The spleen, as well as the lungs.
Yeah.
Right.
All the Chinese medicine spectrum organs, right?
The whole spectrum, right?
Yep.
The lungs, the kidneys, the liver, and the heart.
Yeah.
Each of these play a different role. But it was like a 45-minute, you practice each of these forms. It's like 5 moves, right? Like if you did them back to back, it'd probably be like 5 minutes, but you do them over and over, you do them at different paces. I would practice for like 45 minutes a day.
Yeah.
An hour a day. And that so made a difference for me. Like at first it was really hard, but coming out of that retreat, it wasn't hard. I just got right back in. I got right into it, and it allowed me to just I was up from 6 a.m. until 10 p.m. And then that was just my work day, right? 6 a.m. I'm getting ready and going to work, and then my last lab after multiple workouts and basketball practice and engineering courses and whatever else I was doing, working.
Yeah. And
my last lab, my engineering lab, would get done at 10 o'clock. Just I don't even know, but how I did it was through Qigong. It was through balancing kind of the stress with the rejuvenation, the rejuvenative aspect. Because it's not about running away from stress. It's not about we need to go back to the dark ages, we need to do nothing, we need to destroy cell phones and civilization and just relax and kick it on the beach. That's how humans are meant to live.
Right.
It's adapting to what's here, and what's here is a time of great growth and transformation of systems, whether it's our environmental system on this planet is changing, whether it's medicine or education, whatever. There's a lot of change, and so we're all really up on edge, and I think that's why a lot of this, going back to the caffeine, why we chase that peak state a lot. But after seeing what I was able to do in college, I was hooked. It was this shit works, no joke. You want to be a high performer? This is how to do it. It's not to go and drink the extra coffee. It's to go and do your Qigong. It's to do your deep breathing. It's to lie down in the dark and just be there with no practice having just allowing your thoughts to pass through. And it's definitely a constant just growth and refining of that. But once I saw what was possible with a consistent Qigong practice, and also taking care of my body with nutrition and with working out and really pushing myself. It was seeing the full capability of the human being. I was hooked. I was I'm going to do this for the rest of my life.
Right. It gives you an incentive to jump in once you get that real time taste, right? You're like, ooh, what was that? I would like to eat that again, right? That was a pretty tasty meal. That's something I want to come back to. Well, I mean, I love hearing that Qi Gong was sort of your, at least part of a big piece of like turning the cogwheel for you to move in this direction. And I would love to hear, obviously, we've had this conversation many times. My background, well, I don't know if I told you this. I played sports, contact sports. I played, like soccer for many years as a kid. And then I played football and then rugby in college. And then at about 20, like really jumped into formal martial art training. And I was, going from martial art, that got me into Chinese medicine, Qigong. That was the snowball effect from that point on. But I would love to hear about, since you were a Division I athlete, right? You played basketball, and then you found Qigong. How those were similar and how they were different. Because a lot of people, right, when they hear, I loved your description. I love that you said the sympathetic and parasympathetic system, right? How would you describe if someone who's listening to this and they're like, they don't know anything about Qigong, right? They've heard you say the immortal form and they hear this context of what it is. What would you say, like, what did like traditional exercise give you? And then what did the Qigong arts give you? And then like, how did they harmonize one another? Because I think they both have value, right? It's like just doing Qigong sometimes isn't enough for people. They actually need that push, right? Like The Rock, right? That guy could probably use some Qigong because he's just like he's all hard weights. But I would love to hear that process for you, like how they were kind of different, what they gave you, and how they've blended together. Because they have, I can tell. You found a synergy. So I'd love to hear about that process.
Thank you. Yeah, it's the yin and the yang. It's like we've been talking about. The yang is the sports. It's the lifting, right? It's like the strength. It's like pushing yourself to those. It's the allowing yourself to go into fight mode fully. Yeah. Right. Like I am gonna do like deadlifts, like as much weight as I can. Like I'm gonna lift some heavy shit. Yes. Right. Like that is so valuable, and you don't like the Qigong that I was practicing was not that. It was quite the opposite. It was I'm gonna relax as much as I can and just feel the subtleties of my fingers moving apart and observe the falling of the flying of the insects outside and the sound of the birds. Right. And just how much can I notice? And it's an electrical system. The body is an electrical system. This is a huge part of what CHRG is all about. Yeah.
Talk about this, because this is interesting to me. It's true. Yeah. So I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Yeah.
We've been talking about the parasympathetic. I've been illustrating parasympathetic on this side of the frame and sympathetic on this side. So I'll stick with that. Okay. So. Parasympathetic it's an electrical system. It's all the nervous system, right? Nerves. It's electricity. Yes. That travels, throughout the body. Electrons, right? Zipping around and 100%. And so an electrical system, like if you think of, your phone, right? The computer, right? You fire the computer the whole time. You keep it on the whole time. It dies. It needs to be recharged. Yes. And so with any system, you need to, it's electricity. It needs to be recharged and then expended and then recharged. And that's how batteries work. That's how solar works. That's how the sun works. It's like this expenditure and then it burns out, right? The sun is turns if we were to view, I'm getting away from it there. The body, right?
No, but I see where your brain is going though. And I think it's good to make those associations because these are systems that need, like you said, energy and then expenditure. And that's the bottom line. Like that's so good to have that in the framework because people don't get that, man. They don't. So.
Because you burn out the circuitry if you run it too much, right? Yes. It's the same thing with the caffeine, right? And so you give yourself this time to recharge, right? Yep.
100%, man. Well, when you talk about that, the electrical system of the body, right? You have an engineering background. The thing that I think I've talked about this, and I believe in the lecture when I was teaching at David's event, we talked about the body's like a hydroelectric conductor, right? We have like 70 to 80% water. We have electrical impulses moving through the body, so it follows suit, right? We conduct electricity very well, and we're like you just said so beautifully, which I talk about as well, is that, you know, the system is electrical in nature. Therefore, if it's electrical, right, how do you change, you know, the current? How do you adjust it? That starts to beg the question. If we're an electrical system, can you ratchet it up? Can you zzz, and can you turn it down? Right? Can you?
Yes.
And that's kind of what you're talking about, which I really like, and that's what I think you said with your sports. You know, the really high intensity activity, the deadlifting, right? That's we get that activity where we get to rev the shit out of the system, right? Like all the muscles have to kick on. We stress the system that way, and then you drop into full sensitivity, right? How soft can I get my hands, right? How attentive can I be to the environment? How well can I tune into just the natural ebb and flow of my breathing cycle, right? That starts to like, whoo. Then we get polarity.
Yeah, and that's life.
Yeah, man. Like that's the sweet spot where you're getting to dance into both worlds, and you're not just running on one side, which I think is what you're talking about. Like that was the central cogwheel. I mean, I love that Qi Gong was your thing that kind of like reframed it for you. It's really helped me too, man. Like Qi Gong, that's been my thing to kind of come back to when the shit hits the fan, you know? And I'm like, okay, too many things going on. I need to drop in and actually fully feel what I'm going through here, you know, whatever that is. And if we don't get that right, the system just gets stressed and it doesn't function well, right? There is no high performance or peak performance without the nourishment of this system.
Yeah, valley performance.
Dude. And people crash, right? I mean, how many times I know you've met these people, and
I've crashed. I crash all the time, man.
For sure. It's stressful, man. It's like, and people think I think we get stuck in this. We get in this lull where we're like, how do I get out of this, right? I must push harder. I just must be a piece of shit, right? I must just be, I just got to push harder. And it's like, whoa.
Yeah. This is, I think, why I'm so honored to be on this podcast and to be speaking with you, is like, this is the voice that we are here to both create and offer. Is we don't hear a lot of relax, like just chill for a minute.
Yeah.
There was actually during the NBA finals, there was an ad I was watching, and it was like, this 30-second segment brought to you by so-and-so. And it was just like a pause. And they just did nothing.
Oh, my God.
They were just like,
that's
breathe
huge.
in, breathe out. And it was just like, wow, what the heck?
That's like pattern interrupt, right? Like,
I know. Like, what
was that?
But I mean, that shows it's starting to come more to the fore as this sort of alternative, this balance, right? The yin to the yang.
Mm-hmm. Well, and there's so many ways. I think what's cool about this process as American culture kind of gets hip to this idea, right? There are so many ways to do this. There are so many ways, right? It's not just...
Yes, there's one. Oh my gosh. So one I want to talk about just for a minute.
Yeah.
Because it's an electrical system, right? We're electrical. That's the way that we communicate. It's electrons. It's these subtle little electrical currents that are, little things hopping through our body, right? And this is going to be a little controversial, and I'm not totally sure exactly what's what on the subject, but it's something that I studied in college, right? Sure. And that is electromagnetic radiation, right? The cell phones and I'm not like...
Yeah.
Like satellites, 5G technology is coming, right?
It's like here.
Right? Like SpaceX just signed a deal to put up 2,000 satellites up into the around the planet to beam 5G down to the planet. And it's like one of the ways that I tune down every evening, I believe it or not, right? Like science or not, I'm not saying one thing or the other. I know that some countries are not moving forward with 5G.
Was it Japan?
Japan was recently talking about this. Yep.
They're like, we're not doing this. Yeah.
Yep. We're not doing this yet. Right. They're also similarly about vaccines. They're also in a similar boat, which is like, in America, generally the consensus is vaccines are fine. Stop being paranoid. Right. Same thing about 5G technology or 2.4G for that time, or 2.4 gigahertz for that matter. But I have a switch. I actually bought a little on my Wi-Fi router. I have a little.
I do too, bro.
Dude. Yes.
I have one. Yeah. Okay. So go on though. Yeah, I have one too.
So that's how we turn it off at night. We just turn off the Wi-Fi. It's like, you're not using it, just turn it off. It's not like, yeah, that's it.
It's huge, man. It's, I have to give credit to my wife, because I think my wife's a little more sensitive to like the EMF, electromagnetic frequency stuff. She's just got a she's got a more delicate constitution than I do. I'm a sturdier kind of breed, but she was just doing research on it. She's like, "What do you think about this?" Like, and we have it on a wireless clicker, so it's actually like a wireless button. We have it in our dining room, and you can take the clicker to bed with you. So if we're like watching a movie or doing something,
you don't have to get up. You just, when the movie's off, you just turn off. We have to get up and go to turn it off. So it's like,
well, yeah, but even so, man, the fact that you have it, it's a huge. I mean,
we got to upgrade. We got to get one of these clickers.
Oh, it's great, man. And it's like it's not Bluetooth. I mean, it's not. It's like it's basically like almost like a
infrared or whatever, like a TV remote.
Like a same remote. It's not an EMF hazard, right? It's the same thing as like I think it's actually radio. Like it's just like the most basic, but they have them. You can buy them on Amazon and whatnot. But yeah, man, that's a big stressor, right? The electromagnetic thing is huge. I mean, the 5G thing, I think the problem, I think personally, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, because if we're talking about the collective stressors that come in our environment, we have too much sun, right? Too much radiation from the sun can be bad, right? We have to moderate all of these things, but the 5G thing, I mean, it's really interesting because, like you said, people, they immediately, if you question it, and you're like, wait a minute, hold it, let's just talk about this for a second. There are no long-term studies. Like, there are no long-term anything on 5G. It's a full-blown experimental technology that, I mean, I've talked to, there's a guy named Eric Windheim who I'd like to get on the podcast. Mm-hmm. He's a local EMF specialist. He did there was a school in Ripon, California, which is, I believe, I forget where it is.
It's like out by Tracy, is that?
Yeah, I think so. And, man, they had this big 5G mega tower that's like, there's different classifications of them, but 7 people got cancer in like 18 months at that school. And you can't, there's no claims here. I'm not saying that it was the cause of it.
Correlation does not imply causation.
Right. So we have to I have to fully admit that and stay with that. But I mean, 4 kids and 3 teachers got cancer at this school. And Eric Windheim did the reading at the school, and he's like, the radiation level's coming off it. He's got all of his tools that he uses, and he's like, that is like, it's skyrocketed, and
like orders of magnitude.
Yeah, exactly. And he said,
from what we're around right now.
Absolutely, man. And he said, part of the thing with this technology is the 5G towers, they emit, it's like a laser beam. If you have a 5G device, it shoots like a laser beam to that device, and it's like a direct connection as opposed to this diffuse signal that comes from 3G technology and 4G technology. Right. So it's a very different thing. Yeah, please.
It is. It's very different. So if you think about cellular, just communication, cell tower, the term cell,
yes,
it refers to these long range, right? It started with radio. Like if you think of the FM radio, it's a large field, right? Based on the frequency of the signal that you're sending. So you're turning your radio to like 98 kilohertz, right? And 98.7 FM, right?
Right.
And the wavelength of that is, pretty long, right? It's like, a few, I'm not sure, I can't remember now, it's like a few yards or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Then you talk about 2.4 gigahertz, which is what we have at Wi-Fi, and the sun is kind of doing weird things here.
Yeah, it's all good.
The 2.4 gigahertz is smaller. Right, it's like usually about 2 feet in wavelength, and so as you shrink the wavelength, the energy goes up of the waves that you're sending out, and the distance gets shorter that they go.
Right.
So, like cell towers, you have one cell tower which can communicate with a huge, miles, like square miles of area, and now as we move towards 5G, the wavelengths get smaller, the distance they travel gets shorter. And so it's going to require devices to be spread everywhere because they just don't communicate very far. So you need a lot of repeaters.
Yes.
A cell is like a single unit. And so there's this process of one cell communicating with another cell, another cell, another cell, another cell. That's how cell, like if you're calling if I was to call you, it would go from the Bay Area, hop on all these cells over to where you are.
Right.
And then the signal would come back to me.
Correct.
And with with the 5G, there's just like not infinitely, but there's an exponentially higher number of these cells that are going to be needed. And so there's going to be repeaters everywhere, on lamp posts and on street lights and everywhere. And it's just like, what is that going to do? We don't really know. And that's the kind of, it's not like, we
don't know. I mean, and I think that's the part. Yeah. I mean, that's the hard part for me, man. Like I'm always of the mind, like, I don't want to dive down the deep, dark rabbit hole of crazy conspiracies, right? Like, I don't want to go down
conversation. I feel like, okay, like we're not doing that. We're just talking.
Right. And I think that's the problem, right? Is that if you question, and you're a reasonable tax-paying citizen like myself, and like, hold on, guys, I just have some questions. You're immediately, you're ostracized. Like, oh, you're just a tinfoil hat person. I'm like, bro, slow down. Let's just think about this logically for a second. Right. This would not be the first time that governments have just kind of compromised health for profit. Like, it's happened so many times throughout history. And why is it?
Even not governments, but like corporations.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean, right? In the larger structure of all this.
Corporations, stuff. Governments, what's the difference?
Yeah, like there's pretty close. So it's like, yeah, I mean, that's the thing I think with all of this stuff, it's like, taking the steps to minimize, right? And to peel back.
Right.
And cutting the ways that we can. And I think that's the point that's kind of coming back to this larger thread of what we're talking about is, what are the small things we can do to minimize, right? Because we can't get away from 5G. There's too much. There's too many industries built on it, and there's too much virtual reality that's being built out. There are too many self-driving cars through these companies. There's too much money behind it for the powers that be to stop it. So it's like, right, how do we start peeling back, right? And I think this is like a metaphor for the larger issue. Is like, how do we start just peeling some things back, right? So the body, because we're going to have to adapt to the stress. Our bodies are smart. They're going to have to address these things, and we have to find the little tiny ways to peel back, right? And like you said, getting your Wi-Fi off at night.
Getting your Wi-Fi clicker. Yeah. Get your Wi-Fi switch.
Yeah, man, like turn it off,
Because your body is an electrical system, and these are electrical technologies. And so it's just even with that piece of knowledge,
basic
it's just
idea.
Start to discover, start to explore, start to feel that out.
Yeah. Bit by bit, right? Just like in the small ways that we can. One last question, and if this is just on the 5G thing. I've asked this question to a lot of people, and I it's just the larger interest and curiosity about this is that how are companies able to implement a technology and essentially deploy it onto the population with no oversight? I mean, the fact that 2,000 or 20,000 satellites that Elon Musk is putting up into the atmosphere that is going to beam radiation down to everybody so that everyone has free internet, which I understand the perks of that. Do you know, like, have you heard about this in the larger conversation? Like, why is there no regulation on that? Like, why doesn't the global population get to vote? Like, hey, I'm not really down with that. Do you know?
Yeah, I have some things to offer on that.
Yeah,
so
I'd love to hear it.
It's not that there's no oversight.
Right. Okay.
Because we generally, as human beings, like if you look at any industry, there's some kind of oversight, especially when it gets to large scale. So what happened is there's something called SAR, which you may have heard of, specific absorption rate.
Okay.
And it was one of the testing, it's one of the quantifications of is radiation affecting something or not. Mm-hmm. And it's used primarily to measure heat. Like if you hold a phone up to your ear, how much does it heat up your body? And so old phones used to be rated this way. What's the SAR of your phone? And some would heat up your face more than others, basically. So that does not measure long-term effects. It doesn't measure what other subtle effects in the body. I mean, this body is a subtle instrument. It's we're subtly digesting food. We're subtly doing all these things. That was not looked at. It's just like, okay, hold it up to your face. Did you get cancer for a month? Likely the studies did do prolonged exposure. I don't know the details of what testing was done or not done, but it was looked at from a heat radiation perspective rather than these other forms of radiation which are coming off of it and how those may affect the communication signals in the body. Mm-hmm. And also another thing that you hear a lot, or you may hear when people especially engineering types, or people who are from an engineering background and science background, they're like, well, it's non-ionizing radiation. It's not enough to, change the suborbital of an electron, right, inside of your body. So, or I guess knock an electron off of,
right.
an atom.
To
right?
destabilize the inner structure there, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it can't be that, no issue, right? Because it's non-ionizing. Why are you getting all crazy about this? And you know what else is non-ionizing? A microwave.
Ah, of course.
Right? Stick your head in a microwave for a minute. What's that going to do? That's non-ionizing.
Yep.
Right? So that argument is kaput. And SAR, I mean, that's just the way it played out. That was the way it was tested. And I don't know if you've ever read The Body Electric.
I was going to bring that book up and see if you had.
Oh.
I read it in college. Yeah, it was a great book.
First time I read that, at the end of it, I was so scared. I cried in my room for I don't know how long, but I was really scared because it talks a lot about some subtle concepts like this. I need to go back and read it before I quote it and talk about some of the studies that were done by Dr. Becker. But
yeah. Well, the implications of that book, I think, are right. It's inspiring, and it's also oh shit. Yeah, you're like, okay, so we're electrical. That's electrical systems interface, right? And
you can hack an electrical system.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And so I think that's the part that, So I think what's interesting about this, Thomas, is that you've got, this topic as we're talking about, the work that you're doing, the work that I'm doing, right? And I think what's important about this conversation is that in the end, the stuff that there's a topic here that we're kind of we're kind of circling, and we're coming at it from a few different angles. But what this kind of points back to is the subtlety, right? What's I think sort of lacking in the culture is that we sort of only have defaulted to that which is seen, tangibly felt. If you get hit by a football player, you're like, that was impact. Someone says a shitty thing to you, there's an impact there too, but right, it's not physical. There's an emotional hit that we take. And I think as a culture, we're not trained to be sensitive or even be open to the ideas of the more subtle aspects of, environmental influence, of the things how subtle adjustments in our schedule or in our diet or in our practices that can make these very big results, right? That subtlety is sort of lost in American culture. And I think moreover, what's even worse is that if you are encouraged to tune into the subtleties, right, or to consider the subtleties, you're paranoid, weak, you're all these things, right? If you attempt to feel into the immaterial or to sense the intangible or to do those things, it's seen not only as a waste of time, but as just you're a kook. Why would I, if I can't see it and touch it, what's the point?
Yeah.
And I think that larger, issue, I think is a real problem. Guys,
it's a real,
it's just a problem because it's so much of, I always kind of try to distill it down to the simpler terms, but how many times have you in your life, someone who has just put their hand on your shoulder at the right time or said one sentence that was just what you needed to hear, and that sometimes is more therapeutic than you getting the 2-hour massage or whatever it is. It's sometimes just that one subtle thing that just needed to happen is what can actually shift or tilt the system, and being hip to that, right? Paying attention to it and
telling a person, I love you.
Exactly.
I love you.
Totally. That is exactly right, man. And I think that's the piece that's, gets lost in this and that we have to sort of bring people back to, is that the subtle is profound, And so the subtle, I think the subtle things that we can do, yes, but then what you're talking about, right? I think the 5G stuff isn't so subtle. that's a very real energy being pumped around. We can't see it, but I think it's all relevant for us to be kind of wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
What are the implications here? What are we looking at in the big picture?
I think we'll keep moving in that direction until it has really some impact, on a larger scale.
Yeah.
The subtlety, it's there for those who will pick it up now, and it will continue to move that way, and we'll see where the conversation takes us.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Right. Culturally, right. On the larger scale, what's gonna actually happen. Well, Thomas, if you were to, bringing it back to the stuff that you're doing, the stuff that you're aiming to do with Charged Lifestyle and, recharging the body. And also, I like the image too of charging, like going after life, right? Like pushing forward. There's a charge there that I like. If you were to tell people listening, and they're listening to this conversation we've had and the topics that we've touched on, and paying attention to these things and sensitivity and pushing your body, but also like, calming it down and listening. What's the key? What's in a nutshell? if you were to kind of distill down your message, and I know it's evolving and you got more to do and you're still building it, but if you were to tell people in a nutshell, if you were to distill down Thomas's edict, in a nutshell, what would you say to people, and like, where would you kind of have them start with this process?
Well, I would start with a drink of water.
Yeah. Always a winner, given the bodies mostly water.
Yep, exactly. And I would just kind of breathe deep, because we've been talking a lot. I'm getting fired up. The sympathetic. There it is. It's right there.
Yeah.
Just take a moment and kind of just like that. Like, take a moment for yourself, because today I had a morning of like, I got up early. I got up at 5 a.m., went to the gym, and then took my wife to my wife of 3 weeks and a few days.
Congrats,
I'm
man.
still getting used to calling her wife.
Yeah. I say the wife. That's the way
the wife.
The wife. I'm like, the wife. Yeah.
I took the wife to the train station and then went to work, and I had it was like a morning of kind of some brain fog and haze for myself. Mm-hmm. And then I just took a minute outside, and I went out in back of the office building where I work, and I just started doing some gentle twists, just like twisting my spine back and forth, allowing my hands to float around my body and sort of tap the kidneys, tap the back, the lower back, and just wringing myself out like a sponge. And that stuff like that, like, it was 5 minutes I was out there. I mean, not even, it was like 1 minute I was actually doing the twists. Yeah. And I just like, there's this stress that rises in us, and there's this impulse to like change something or do something. And if the key thing is just to remember that you have the controls. Like, you are the one controlling your body. Mm-hmm. You're the one deciding if you stay focused on that email or that phone or whatever it is, or that person, right? That interview, right? Yep. Whatever it may be for you. Yeah. You're the person who has your hands on the controls, and your body is this control system. Mm-hmm. And so if you notice something that isn't working, it's your responsibility, your accountability, your privilege to be able to take new actions based on that information. Yeah. And you're in control.
I agree, man. And your message is simple, which I really appreciate. What you just said, when I was like, Thomas's edict in a nutshell, you're like, take the moment. You're in control. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a pretty simple thing, and there's tremendous, simplicity carries profundity usually, right? There's like the simple things are profound. And I would say I agree with you, man. Like those simple things of just that, if people get that idea, what you just said, that is a game changer. But we forget, right? We are a victim to circumstance. We are a victim to our jobs, to our thoughts, to our food choices, and people, and we all get into that. Like, I can't help it, and it's like, well, you're just on autopilot. You are in control. You are running this system. Mm-hmm. So I really appreciate that, man, that it's a simple message, right? Like, take the moment.
And the corollary that I would add is, there is this pattern that this is the thing that I've heard us circling about, or one of the things we've been circling around, is this positive and negative. Yes. The yin and the yang. It's the nature of electricity. Mm-hmm. It is positive and negative. It's the nature of light and dark. It's yin and yang. It's this balance. Yep. And so the thing to do while you're in that moment, noticing what you're noticing, is to notice whether you're up or whether you're down. And to take note of where you want to go. So if you're relaxing and you want to stay relaxed, keep doing relaxing actions, like keep doing that.
Right.
But if you want to rev yourself up, start taking more, like maybe have the cup of coffee if that's your intention, if you want to go up.
Mm-hmm. Like
you're the controller, and you get to decide whether you, based on the impact, the feedback that you receive, you decide what you do with it.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, for most systems in life, there's a positive and a negative aspect. There's a rejuvenative and there's an active aspect.
Yes.
So balance those two things, and you will find yourself in possession of a lot of power in your life.
Yeah, I agree, buddy. And it's a topic, like I said, it's something that we've forgotten, or we've just stayed so busy that we're refusing to look at it. You know, I don't know. I think it's probably a mixture of both. But I agree, and it's simple, and it's a simple message, you know, and you're not alone. I mean, I've got, you know, I agree with you. I mean, I'm pushing similar things, you know, we all say it in our own way and try to get it across to people. And
same damn thing.
Yeah.
We're all saying the same damn thing.
Yeah, it really is though, man. There are very few original ideas. People, it's always funny to me when people are like, "Oh, great, that was so insightful." I'm like, "Was it?" I'm like, I'm rehashing what's been said for a long time. You know, I'm just saying it in a new way. I'm like, I don't know how much insight there is.
Remembering that.
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's like I don't know how much insight there is, you know, to the things I say or other people say. It's like, boy, you know, we're all saying the same thing, but we do need to hear it, right? It kind of points to this bigger picture that we've either forgotten it or we've lost the ability to embody it. You know, there's like, so we do need to hear it. It does need to be rehashed out. It does need to be said over and over again. You know, I'm brought back to this from like martial art training. I mean, how many times a teacher said something to me about a posture or a gesture or a move, like, no, lower it here, you know, land it there. The body leans this way. Hear it 100 times, and then one day it clicks. How many times did I need to hear it before I was like, okay, you know, and that's true for lots of areas in life. But I appreciate, man, that you are one of the people that's rehashing it. I appreciate that you're saying it, that you're actively stoked on the process of getting people to remember it. I mean, it's a great thing, man, to just help people out here, because people do burn out in corporate. I've worked with them. You see it. You've burned out, like you said.
Yeah.
So it's a good message, man. It's really good. Well, dude, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate your time and just taking the, you know, I know you're at work, I can tell. So, you know, taking the time to just talk about these ideas and kind of giving people a framework to take the moment, realize they're in control. That's a good reminder for all of us. Thomas, if people want to follow you or check out what you're doing or kind of see, you know, your larger rhythm of just, you know, they want to see what you're doing, where can people find you? What's the best way?
People can find me on Instagram. That's at CHRG Lifestyle. So charge without any vowels.
Okay,
lifestyle.
Cool.
It's, you know, it's the modern, you know, cool stuff.
Yes.
Also chargelifestyle.com, spelled the same way, CHRGlifestyle.com.
Okay, very cool. And that's the best way when we can kind of track your goodies that way, it sounds like.
You can track my goodies that way. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm also on LinkedIn and I'm also on Facebook, but check the Instagram for the goodies, like the good goodies. That's where I'll be posting my best content.
Okay. Very cool, man. Well, again, thank you so much for your time, and you know, keep doing the good work. Keep sending that simple message, man, because it needs to be said and people need to hear it. So I appreciate your time, man. Thank you.
Thank you, Gray. It's been an honor.
Yeah, man.
And a pleasure. And we should do this in person with whiskey next time.
Oh, you're not going to get any pushback from me on that one, amigo. All right, man. Take care.